It's Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special, taking a look at the new DTP CrossPoint from Extron. And with me to talk about it is Jim Scrivner. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much.
So here's the thing. This is you guys call it the DTP3 CrossPoint an all-in-one box, quote unquote. Why is that?
We've been leading the industry with presentation switchers and presentation matrix switchers for well over a decade. The presentation matrix switchers are very versatile products. They combine several functions and core technologies within a single product. Would you agree that AV switching and extension, audio processing and amplification, and system control are key elements within most AV designs?
Yeah, that's pretty much all. So yeah, I get your all-in-one. So we talked about the fact that this is new. So what is new about the DTP3?
The DTP3 CrossPoint combines all of this functionality and much more within a single product. So what's new about these products versus the predecessors, if you will, is that we basically are adding a lot of new capabilities, functionality, and improved performance within the single box. So there's all sorts of new things that customers can expect over what they've been familiar with our previous DTP 4K models, which have been mainstays for quite some time.
Yeah.
So getting into the what's new aspect of it from the video side of things, there's several new components, if you will, of it. First off and foremost is that all of the inputs and outputs now support 18 gigabits per second data rates, which means that that supports uncompressed 4K 60 performance, even from an end-to-end standpoint when it's paired with DTP3 transmitters and receivers. So regardless of which size you're actually using, you get full 4K 60 support across the system. Other aspects of it include input flexibility has been increased greatly. If you're familiar with our current products, you'll notice that they've got fixed HDMI and DTP3 ports on them. That's still the case with these new models, but on that aspect, we also added input flexibility there to where you can configure certain number of inputs with as DTP or HDMI. On the output side, there's more flexibility that goes along with those guys too. They've got scaling on all outputs. If you're familiar with our current DTP CrossPoints, we only scale on the twisted pair outputs. So now every output, regardless of whether it's twisted pair or HDMI, can be scaled. There's some added flexibility on the output side as well that basically got fixed DTP and HDMI ports there, but we also have some of those ports that are mirrored, meaning that you can get both simultaneous HDMI and twisted pair outputs there. So convenience comes into play there in terms of being able to customize the approach within a system, if you will. Invariably, the question is always, I need more HDMI or I need more twisted pair for signal extension needs, right? Now you've got the flexibility to really dial that system in based off of the needs that you truly have. And that's in use with one model, but we also have 4 different models. So from a size perspective, we basically can address any system needs from mid to large size types of systems. A cool feature that furthers this cause is the reversible I/O ports. So reversible I/O ports on the twisted pair, they can be individually assigned as either inputs or outputs. So for example, the DTP3 CrossPoint 884, it has 8 inputs, 8 outputs, and 4 reversible I/O ports. So in total, it gives you up to 15 different size combinations that you can address with that single model. That ranges from 8 by 12 sizes to 12 by 8 sizes and virtually anything in between. So you can imagine how you can basically settle on one model almost and use that for the majority of design applications that you might have. Now, you don't want to be overkill with the 884, for example. If you have smaller sizes, you can use those as well. So the 884 is one, the 662 is another, the 642, and the 622. The nomenclature, as I mentioned, that last digit in the model name indicates how many reversible I/O ports that you have. So that brings a huge amount of flexibility to the design approach.
So talk about those reversible I/O ports. Why are those flex ports so important when it comes to whether it's higher education or corporate boardrooms? Why are those important?
It basically gives a lot of design flexibility. So you have a design background, correct?
Yep.
How many times did you struggle with products and trying to connect either locally or extended?
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, most installations have more and more really needs to support extended distances, especially with increased data rates and higher resolutions. Those typically can't be connected directly over 15 feet of an HDMI cable, for example. So that's where twisted pair inputs and outputs become more important. And depending on the needs of the system, I may have some products installed in a table. I may need to support auxiliary inputs at a wall location, things like that. That's where I could take advantage of the twisted pair a little bit more. Now, in terms of the reversible I/O and assigning it as either as an input or an output, that's where the flexibility of the reversible I/O ports come into play. So I may have, I don't know, more displays, more remotely located displays, like say in an educational environment with the active learning or something like that. I can reutilize those ports as outputs, and there I have more on the output side for those extended runs, and vice versa on the input side if I had multiple wall plates or something like that to support too.
Really quickly, because I want to pull on this flexible part. There is, you mentioned the fact that I used to be a designer a long time ago, and there is I'm not going to say every time, but a majority of the time, you get on site and oh hey, the client's like, oh, we have another display, or oh hey, we need one more input because somebody along the way discovered that we didn't have a laptop, or somebody said, oh hey, by the way, we have this new learning management system. Talk for a second about how easy it is to when you're in the field to configure those flexible ports to accommodate some of those, I'm not going to call them last minute design elements, but on-site design elements, let's call them.
Well, that's the beauty of these types of products. They're so flexible that you can configure them any way that you need them to. So the ports themselves can be configured via SIS command, RS-232 command issued to the product, if you will. Also, our software platform gives convenient access and full managing capability of the product itself too. So you could utilize those to change that from an input to an output if you happen to need that. I don't suggest doing that on the fly, just because there is a little bit of a time lapse in there. So it's not meant as a production type of switcher or anything like that.
But certainly on site when you're commissioning the system. And
exactly. We talk about different markets served with these products, and that type of functionality in the product is well suited for rental staging applications. I think that's kind of what we're posing it as a fixed installation, but in rental staging applications, imagine they can configure that system however they need to for whatever the remote needs are. And that's where those reversible ports come into play.
Well, and speaking of rental and staging, the fact that you have scaling outputs is also incredibly important to rental and staging, because a lot of times you've got, let's call it the typical setup, you've got two projectors on either side of a podium. That's a dedicated resolution and the ability to take that signal regardless of which input it is and scale it out to the dedicated resolution of the optimal resolution for that display. Absolutely.
That's a great point, and that actually extends beyond rental and staging applications in terms of the variety of scaled outputs that you can support with the one product. So nowadays, more and more we have streaming appliances attached to the output, right? Recording appliances, those sorts of things. And many of those operate at different resolutions. I may want to send that 4K 60 pristine image up to my displays, but my streaming appliance only supports 4K 30 or 1080p or whatever. With the scaling on all outputs, regardless of where those outputs are located, those devices are located, I can customize the scaled resolutions to meet those needs and keep the video as clean as possible.
Jim, we've kind of hit around this. I want to hit square on this. You mentioned the four different models, which obviously is the multiple inputs, multiple outputs, and the different flexible ports. Where do you see them having the biggest impact? Are we talking? We just talked about rental and staging. I mentioned corporate and higher education, but where do you see the DTP3 CrossPoint really having the biggest impact? What areas?
I'm going to take the Extron high road approach here and basically say that these things can be used everywhere. In fact, they are used everywhere. The functionality of them is so versatile that they're well suited and find homes in virtually every vertical market within the industry. So from a corporate perspective, you'll find these as heart of the systems types of products in boardrooms, auditoriums, divisible room types of environments, all kinds of things like that. So anywhere that you need a level of matrix switching, these can be used. In education, kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, active learning scenarios where they're feeding different pods and receiving information from those pods. Yeah. Those are perfect use cases there. The added resolution capability that we talked about makes them well suited for esports systems, for example. Auditoriums and larger types of environments like that, they're ideal for there as well. Worship, house of worship, yep. A single product can easily serve the needs of a small worship type of AV system. You've got overflow rooms, cry rooms, those sorts of things, and it's perfectly suited for that. The internal audio amplifiers, especially with the larger power performance or increased power performance, makes them much better solutions for those environments too. We talked about rental and staging, just simply due to the flexibility of it. Those could be used in hotel environments or something like that too. But the beauty of it is that you've got one product and you can send that out on any job and configure it as needed. Yeah. The twisted pair ports on that, I'm not sure if I may have skipped over this earlier. They're fully compatible with our DTP and our DTP3 transmitters and receivers. So if you're familiar with those, that's the largest offering of twisted pair endpoints in the industry. So you can take advantage of wall mount types of products, under table, rack mount types of products, and even floor box types of form factors and build your system all around that.
Very cool. I mentioned, we talked about education and we'll just generically, IT managers, AV managers, regardless of where they are, corporate or wherever. I am old enough to remember when my fantastic Extron rep, I will not throw him under the bus, but I didn't throw him under the bus, but I won't embarrass him. I remember him coming to our campus and showing me Global Viewer for the first time. And it was revolutionary at the time because it gave us the ability, we had several buildings on our campus. We could manage everything from my single dashboard, right? This is several years ago. No, it wasn't in black and white, but it was really close. But it gave us the ability to manage everything. And when you look at just, the folks that are involved, the tech managers that are involved, how do they manage and update the DTP3 CrossPoint?
Much has changed over the decades, if you will. And
I didn't say decades, Jim.
Well, I could very well have been that guy supporting you back those many years ago. So, in all fairness, I think both of us are a little bit on the age side in the industry. But that's all good. It just brings experience, right? It makes everything better.
There you go. Experience.
So, as I was saying, much has changed and much hasn't changed. Yeah. So, in terms of managing the system via control system, that's easily done through Global Viewer. Each of the models offered, I named the 4 different models within the series, but each one of those is available with or without an integrated control processor. So that particular version, it contains both the control processor and the audio amplifier. Not sure if we talked about the capabilities of the audio amplifier, but we've made huge improvements along those lines as well. And I'll get back to the management aspect, but I kind of deviated into the audio.
Yeah.
We have some important additions there that I wanted to make sure we got across. So the audio amplifier itself has increased in performance. We've doubled the wattage on it. We've added 32 by 32 Dante. We've included within the single version that has the audio amplifier both mono and stereo capabilities. So customers no longer have to order separate models. They can order the IPCPA and get a audio amplifier and configure it whether they want single channel or stereo type of output capability. In addition to that, there's also a USB-C audio port, which allows connecting directly to a soft conferencing computer to manage those types of video conference applications. So a lot of new cool stuff there is in place with the audio. The control system, it's a quad-core control processor, similar to a standalone version that we offer. 2 of those ports support PoE+, so that enables direct connection of a touch panel without need for external power supplies. So those things factor in too. But getting back to the management aspect of it, that IPCPA version would include that internal control processor. You would utilize a global configurator to set up the system, and then you'd be able to take advantage of the global viewer to manage all of those systems. So these types of products, they're very convenient for large-scale deployment across a campus, for example, a school campus, or even corporate, facilities. So that's where the global viewer management aspect of it, from a help desk scenario, those sorts of things, comes directly into play.
Really quick, you mentioned Dante, and I think that's an important part because Extron over the last few years has incorporated Dante into several of their products. Just so we say this out loud so people understand, because it's a Dante product and you've got the 32 by 32, you can see that on Dante Manager, but you can also manage that inside the Extron software.
Correct. Our DSP configurator software allows you to manage all of the inputs and outputs, including the Dante connectivity. So these days you're seeing very, very popular use case of Dante microphones in particular.
Yeah.
Those ceiling microphones that are out there are used all over the place. But on the output side, in a divisible room scenario, those sorts of things, I could even take Dante out to a Dante-enabled power amplifier, those sorts of things. That would also hold true for a house of worship type of application.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
a lot of increased flexibility there is afforded by the Dante connectivity.
Jim, as we wrap up here, why would an IT manager pick an all-in-one box for control, for audio, for video, for matrix switching, as opposed to separate individual boxes?
That's a great question. I've been asked that many times before, and I've been included in many different conversations and debates, if you will.
Yeah.
I fully appreciate the individual perspectives and standpoints on whatever approach might be preferred. I kind of view it as, a Pepsi versus Coke type of thing, right? Both of them are good, and, lovers of one have had to use the other for various reasons, right? You go to a facility that doesn't serve Pepsi, you drink Coke. But similar holds true here with the design approach. Fundamentally, all-in-one types of products, they offer a cost savings because they're all of the functionality is combined into one product. On the flip side, people might argue that single points of failure bring down the entire system, that sort of thing. I would counter with the question to you. When you were back designing systems, hopefully you designed Extron products. You sound like it because you had the global viewer experience. What about our products made you consider and choose those in designs?
That's a long time ago, Jim. So we used them because they just worked, quite frankly, right? That was the bottom line. And price certainly was a consideration. Having a standard on our campus was certainly a consideration. The reason they became a standard was because they just worked, right? And that was the bottom line. Was we had a finite budget, and we had to make sure that whatever we put in would work well past our refresh cycle.
But that's exactly the point, and that's kind of the counter that I would always have with people about the all eggs in one basket type of concern. Granted, it is definitely a concern, and nobody wants a system to go down versus based off of one aspect. But that same argument holds true if I were to take an approach in different boxes. So, those sorts of things come into play. But in terms of management, we've got multiple products essentially within this DTP3 CrossPoint.
Yeah.
So it actually becomes easier to manage it from that standpoint there. We're talking about environmentally conscious these days. So even power efficiency comes into play. Imagine if I've got that system with a bunch of endpoints connected, a bunch of different products that who knows whatever type of efficiency they may or may not have with their power supplies. That all comes into play, as well as overall power usage. We take power efficiency very serious with the products. We've got different modes of operation: a standby mode, output power management types of modes, and even to that end, we design our own power supplies. So the power supply that's running this entire system is a very efficient power supply, and more importantly, it's a very reliable power supply. So it won't fail in probably the remainder of our career.
Jim and I don't have long. He's already mentioned that. All right, Jim Scrivner, thank you so much. How do people find out more about Extron and specifically about the DTP3 CrossPoint?
It's all over our website currently. Go to extron.com /DTP3 CrossPoint. That'll take you to our landing page, which gives you a high-level overview of the product and its capabilities. It has various levels of support, introduction videos, those sorts of things. And then it also can take you to the individual product pages for more information. One thing that I did not mention was wireless capability with the new models. Sorry about missing that earlier, but that's a big add. You might be familiar with our ShareLink wireless presentation system. I mentioned the 4 different models that we have. One's an 8 input, and then the other 3 have 6 inputs. All of those 6 input models offer optional ShareLink integration that allows support of up to 4 wireless devices within the overall system. So all of that information can be found by hitting the resource that I just mentioned.
All right, very good. Jim Scrivner from Extron. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv, and you'll find more videos like this and a host of others. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.